Cool. All right. So, welcome everyone to the AI Transformation Workshop. I'm here with Lior Weinstein. We're tag teaming it together for today. We have a lot of value packed into this stream for you guys. So, the plan for today, it is a 2.5 hour event, and Lior is going to start with 1 hour covering his AI org chart. What does it look like to optimize a business for AI? And then for the hour after that, I'm going to be covering best practices for leveraging AI coding assistance. So what does it look like to build with AI? So Lior is building a business around AI. I'm building with AI. And then we'll have a half hour at the end for Q&A. And so we're going to get right into things for you guys today. So I'm going to start with a quick introduction for myself, and then I'll pass it over to Lior to give an intro and then get right into the meat of what he has prepared for you guys. So my name is Medin. I am an AI educator and consultant. I've been a software engineer my entire life, and I went all in on AI back in 2022 when generative AI really became a big thing. With GPT 3.5 when it was released. It feels like ages ago now. And so I quickly gained a lot of expertise. I've lost count of the number of businesses and startups that I've consulted for. I got a lot of experience quickly where I wanted to just share it with the world. And so everyone is here right now on my YouTube channel. This is where I post content and do live streams every single week. I also have a private AI community where I host workshops, and I have courses on building agents and using AI coding assistance in ways that actually scale. And then also more recently, I've started to do corporate training. So like 1 to 4 hour sessions guiding enterprise teams on how to adopt a standard for using AI coding assistance across the organization. And that's a lot of what I'm going to be covering with you guys today for my segment, which I am really excited for. But that's enough of me. I'll go ahead and pass over to Lior. Go ahead and take it away. Not able to hear you, Lior.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you, Cole.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about what AI does to work. So my big frame of thing is that it's not the end of work, but it's the end of boring work. So ideally, after my segment today, you'll be able to reflect and introspect what are the parts of your job that are relevant to get assisted or be replaced with AI, and also for you to bring it to the companies you work with, to the companies you lead, to the teams you're collaborating with. So this is going to be more the version of work that actually shows up on Monday morning in the company. And this is an invitation to just see what's possible for you, for your company, and the people who work there. So some background about me: I'm Lior Weinstein. I'm the founder and head coach at CTOX. I'm an active fractional CTO with a 7-figure practice. And over the last decade, I've worked with companies ranging from early stage startups to 8- and 9-figure organizations. I've built team, rebuilt systems, fixed chaos, scaled infrastructure, and now I'm helping businesses adopt AI to grow. At CTOX, we've helped over 350 senior technologists make the shift into this space. And the best part, I've been able to do this while traveling the world with my wife and 3 kids. There are the few of the companies I've helped over the years, and I'm not showing this to impress you. I'm showing this to impress upon you that have led technology for teams in a variety of industries, including healthcare, home services, real estate, fintech, coaching, and education. And what Cole and I are going to share with you today is relevant to every business in every industry. Now, here's a stat that lands in your bones if you've ever run a team. 60% of your day goes to work about work. That means meetings, status updates, searching for information, reformatting data, copying numbers from one system to another. And 40% of your day is your actual job, the thing you were hired for, the thing you're brilliant at, 4 out of every 10 hours. And you are not a robot. So why so much of your day spent doing robot work? I don't say that as criticism of you. I say this as criticism of how we've built work and what we used to value. Whether you lead a company or work for one, stop wasting your time on robotic tasks. The companies that win the next decades are the ones that figure out how to invest in their people so nobody has to be a robot again. Every industry right now is going through a Blockbuster moment. You know the story. Blockbuster was printing money, thousands of stores, and then Netflix showed up with a different model, and Blockbuster said, "Cute, we're fine." They were not fine. Every business owner and CTO in this room, every person that works for one of these companies, is looking at the same fork. You can be Blockbuster. We've always done it this way. Hold on, hope it passes. Or you can be Netflix. We see what's coming. Adapt, lead, leap ahead. Today is about giving you the framework to choose Netflix. Now, here's something most people get wrong about this. Becoming Netflix, it's not about replacing people with machines. It's about giving people superpowers. One person with AI does what 5 people did manually. Same talent, way bigger surface area. And if you're sitting there thinking, sounds great, but what about my team's jobs? What about my job? Here's the part that everyone forgets. When ATMs came out in the 80s, every banker said tellers would vanish. Machine do the job now. It's over for bank tellers. What actually happened is that tellers went up, not down, up. Banks opened more branches at a lower cost. Tellers, though, shifted from counting cash to advising, selling, and solving problems. The job got better. That's exactly what's happening here. Your opportunity is to make every person in your company 10x more effective by working with intelligence that never sleeps, not by working harder. Now, this is an example of an org chart the way mostly we know it. So if we have 13 humans, we have 13 workers. But in the new paradigm, we have 13 humans that each one might have 30 agents working for them. So for the same 13 humans, we might see 390 workers in the company. So I want you to introduce in this concept that frames everything else today, front stage and backstage. Think about any big event. And Cole, if you don't mind, share a link in the YouTube chat. And I want to make it as interactive as possible for us today. So grab that link, open it up so you can interact in a little bit. So think about front stage and backstage. When Celine Dion goes on stage and performs, that's her front stage, her genius, the thing that only she can do. Celine Dion isn't testing the payment gateway. She's not sending the ticket confirmations. She's not seating 20,000 people who are coming to watch her perform. That's the backstage. It has to work, but it's not where the magic happens. Every leader, every engineer, every person in this room has both. You have the work where you are brilliant. It's the reason you got hired. It's the reason why you run your business, the reason your team trusts you. And you have work that buries it, the prep, the admin, the coordination that eats your day before you get to lead and do the actual job. The tragedy is that all of this isn't the busy work. It's all the brilliant work that never gets done because of the busy work. The architecture decision you postponed because you were updating Jira, the team conversation you never had because you were copying data between systems, the product call you never made because you were formatting a report. Now, your turn. I'd like you to make 2 lists. This is the interactive part. The first list is the front stage, the work where you shine, the work that needs your judgment, your creativity, your relationship. The second list is the backstage, everything that supports it, but it isn't the main act. Now, take 90 seconds. I want you to classify the work you do in a typical week in one of those 2 lists. Now, grab the link from the YouTube comments, from the YouTube chats. And then I want you, after you do it, I want you to share it. Okay, drop it in the chat. Use the link because we're going to show everybody what are your answers as a group. So think front stage, what's your genius? Backstage, what buries it? All right, so look at that. I'm going to open it, see what you guys, sorry. Okay, let me know if any ideas come up. I'd love to hear from you. You can also DM. So front stage, strategy and leadership, backstage, research and administrative. Perfect, great example. Actually fixing someone's network or having a conversation to make them feel warm and fuzzy. That's great. For Cole, front stage is creating content and planning new work for my coding agent. Backstage is communication and editing content. Perfect. For me at CTOX, I love coaching. That's a natural point for me. But planning my schedule, planning my content actually is my backstage. Front, how to plan and go through a project. Great example. Like in the comments, somebody front stage is actually my backstage. And then backstage entering time in tickets. Great example. You see, the brilliant work is buried under admin. And it's the same pattern with every role. Somebody just added ideas, efficiencies, governance versus email, writing content, and finances. Perfect. Now, before we talk about what AI can do, let's talk about what it shouldn't ever touch. Okay, this matters as much as the rest. So we call these the no-go zones. AI creates efficiency, but AI doesn't create empathy. AI doesn't care. You do. Now, there are 4 areas where human connection is the product, not overhead, to optimize away. The first is relationships. The trust you build face-to-face, the call you make when a team member is struggling. The next is judgment calls, the decisions that need wisdom and context, knowing when to break the rules. The next one is physical presence, being in the room when it matters. And finally, empathy and creativity, the moments that need a human heart, the ideas that come from lived experience. Now, knowing where AI shouldn't go is just as important as knowing where it should. Your front stage is protected. That's always yours. Now, let's talk about your backstage. So, quick one. What part of your job should never be handed to AI? The relationship, the moment, the decision that requires you, not a machine. So 60 seconds, everyone has at least one. So what comes up? And these are a few examples in the slide, but I want you to drop in, like, think about it. What should never be handed to AI? Maybe you're a realtor and you're interacting with clients. Maybe you're a team lead and you're helping strategy once a quarter. What do you think should never be handed to AI? Chris submitted taste. That's great. This is funny. Coaching. Bill Bauer says coaching requires human-to-human interaction and relationships. Perfect. Great example. What else comes up? What part of your job should never be handed to AI? Just drop it in the chat or through the link. Concepts and strategies. Life goals and life planning, or I guess life goals and life planning. Dave Castle says client relationships. Perfect. Figuring out what the customer needs versus what they want. Chris, great examples. What else? What should you never let AI do? Reading people and situations, team dynamics, hiring instincts, member vibes. Actions to take related to worker safety. Great example, Sean. Cole says recording the content possible, but I can't see myself doing that for long form. Yeah. Big sweeping changes for the customer without oversight. Financial decision. Financial decision is a very important one. Tough conversations. Use AI to make them simpler, but deliver the message personally. Great. Have access to delete the database. Yes, Rich. Don't let AI do that. Great point. Okay, let's get one more. And then we're going to do some mapping of your day-to-day. Okay. Firing someone. Yes. Don't let them do that. Great example. Okay, perfect. Which is just like the tough conversations. So, and if you look at these in the comments or what I mentioned, every single one is something no AI can touch. It's the one-on-one, the judgment calls, reading the room. That's your competitive advantage. Nobody's automating that ever. So your front stage is protected. Your no-go zones are mapped. Now here's the framework for everything else. And the goal is simple. Make your backstage, move your backstage to AI so you can live on your front stage. And let me show you how. So let's talk about this AAA framework. 3 layers, 3 kinds of intelligence, 3 ways AI shows up in a company. Layer 1 is the hands, automation. This is the work that gets fully offloaded, no human in the loop. The machine does it and you never think about it again. So what gets automated? Generally 4 patterns. The first is repetitive. Same task, same way, every time. The weekly report built from 5 spreadsheets every Monday, same column, same formatting. The second is rule-based, a clear if-then logic. You could write the instructions on an index card. If invoice under 10,000, approve it. If lead books a call, update Salesforce. The third is high volume, frequent enough that the math is obvious. Hundreds of tickets routings a week, thousands of status updates a month. And finally, the fourth is low judgment. It doesn't need wisdom or context or relationships. Think data entry, format conversions, moving information from system A to system B. So when you automate the boring part, you don't lose your job. You get to do the real one. Now your turn. So think about your week. What's one task that fits any of these patterns? Repetitive, rule-based, high volume, low judgment. I want you to write it down and estimate how many hours a week it eats, right? If you can submit it through the link, that would be great. Then just submit the task and how many hours a week do you think it eats? So Sean is submitting, pulling data from desperate systems into standard reports, 10 hours a week. Great example. Yeah, what else is coming up? So think about it. Anything repetitive, anything rule-based, high volume, low judgment. How much time per week does it take you right now to do? Or if you know your team members, other people, and so on. First email to prospect new customers, few hours. Great. Yeah, that's very repetitive work. Data aggregation, report generation, 10 hours. Eric. Cole says writing code, hard to count because it's been delegated to AI for so long. Going through emails, 10 hours a week. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, anything repetitive, anything administrative, these are the things that we're looking for. Understanding changes to front-end prototype. Yeah, that is certainly. Writing lessons, 3 hours a week. Billing, 2 hours a week. Great examples. Give me a couple more. Anything that's boring, that you're like, man, this is just repetitive. I just find myself doing the same thing over and over again. Transcribing meeting notes, creating and managing follow-ups from meeting. Yeah, great. Perfect, very common. Now you'll notice as you go through this process, it starts helping you understand your role and also the people you work with. What are they really doing? What are they really doing that they love doing? What are they really doing that they're valuable? What are they really doing that nobody else can do? Because a lot of people can do transcriptions, they can go through emails, they can send, prospect emails, right? Market research, several hours a week, blogging. Okay, perfect. And that's the thing. These hours just add up. 2 here, 3 here, 5 hours. That's time every single week you could get back. Now multiply that across your team, and then the number is just staggering. So layer 2, we call it the suit, augmentation. So think Iron Man or Robocop, depending on how old you are. Tony Stark is still inside the suit, still calling the shots, still deciding where to fly, but the suit gives him capabilities he could never have alone. Same human, same judgment, same creativity, superpowers on top. Now, Harvard and BCG studied this. Consultants using AI completed 12% more tasks, finished 25% faster, and produced over 40% higher quality work. Here's the part that should excite every person in this room. The biggest gains went to the lowest performers. AI is a great equalizer. It makes your best people better and it lifts everyone's performance. And we are in this doer to manager of bots transition. You go from doing the work to managing the intelligence that does the work. Same person, same role, different output. A sales rep who spent 45 minutes researching a prospect before the email, that's now 5 minutes. The team building on an internal page from a brief does it the team building on an internal page from brief does it hours faster. The team prepping fireside questions, AI does it in the first pass, and the team does the curation. Now, where are your Iron Man moments? So think about one task that you're the expert, but you spend most of your time on prep before the actual decision. And I want you to kind of post on chat or through the link, what's the ratio? How much is prep versus how much is judgment? Okay, so write it down and submit it. It's going to be in your Iron Man moment under that link. So think something took 45 minutes, took maybe hours of prep just to be in a 20-minute meeting and making a decision, right? Those are those examples. Conduct a root cause analysis on a worker safety incident. 2-3 days prep for a 1-hour decision. Great example. Cole says, lots of research going into what content I should focus on for the week before I actually pick one for YouTube or LinkedIn posts. Yeah, content ideation, killer one. I love the root cause analysis on an incident. That's a great example. Anything in that legal space, kind of big decisions, really great. QBR meetings. Yep, quarterly business review meetings. Great example. You have a lot of prep, show the data, show the insights, just to show it for a few minutes and, make a quick decisions. OSINT reports before meeting potential clients. Great. Executive presentations, getting the right tone, intro level of detail, hours of prep for 5 minutes on screen. Great example. Let's hear another one. Yeah, anything involving research. Also, Rich says research could take days, for something that then you use for hours. Okay, give me one more that you spend a lot of time on. Okay, research and develop safety training. 1 week of prep for a 1 or 2 hour presentation. Or, designing asset for prototyping, 8 hours. Yeah, great examples. Now, I want you to notice that the ratios, right? Some of you are talking about hours of prep or days for a 5-minute on screen, right? And that's very common to have 3 hours, 8 hours for like 10 minutes of judgments, 5 minutes of judgment, 2 hours of research for a 5-minute decision. And that's your judgment buried under busy work. And here's where this one goes. This is your evolution path. The doer execute tasks manually. That's where most of us are, and most of the time. The manager, you oversee the AI handling these tasks. You handle the exceptions, you improve the systems, and then the strategist. You direct intelligence to achieve outcomes. You design capabilities. The path moves one direction towards more valuable, more interesting, better work. Now, layer 3 is the brain. We call it autonomy. These are digital employees. Now, know the terminology, digital employees, not tools or assistants. They take input, think, decide, act, handle exceptions, and produce output without you in the loop. Now, when does this work? 4 criteria. 1, it must be self-contained, clear inputs and outputs. You can draw a box around the whole function. It must be measurable. You know objectively it worked. You also must have error recovery. It can detect problems and try alternatives. And the critical one, it must be built on layers 1 and 2. Autonomy is not where you start, it's where you arrive. Now, your turn. If you can hire one person whose only job was to handle something you never want to think about it again, what would you have them do? How would you know they're doing a good job? So I want you to take a moment, think about this, and then please drop it in chat or through the link. So think about who would you hire? Who would you hire? And what would you have them do? Who would you hire and what would you have them do? How would you know they're doing well? You can go back to the examples we had earlier. So maybe for Cole, you would only have the LinkedIn post research hire, right? Or video script research, video script writer. What's coming up? Who would you hire? Prospect research. Great. And how would you know that they did a good job? How would you know they're doing well? Okay, Sean says training, development, coordination. So this is somebody that creates a development coordination of training, content creator, qualified leads regularly, makes social media for the apps. So use scale metric to measure engagement. Great. That's how you know they're doing a good job. Good examples. What else can we come? Content creator, qualified leads, someone to keep track of all my time and put it in my ticket so it's billable. And I know they're doing a good job because all my time is accounted for. Great example. Why is that a great example? Because it's such a specific task. Right? We're going to talk about this in a minute, but I want you to think about specific, not an all-in-one Jedi can do everything, but rather something very, very specific. They're accomplishing a very specific task, exactly like this. Someone to track all my time and put it in my ticket so it's billable. Great example. What else is coming up? Invoices. I would have someone review the invoices before they are sent. I would gather requirements and get decisions out of customers. So I end up with a to-do list that I can just execute. Perfect. Great example. Let's hear one more. And go back to your list. Go back to your backstage. What did you write down? Go back to your robot tasks. What did you write down? Bookkeeper. No missed payments or receivables. Great example. Administrative work. Sampling periodically for testing. We'll try to think more. What are you sampling for? What is the thing that you're testing, that you're checking? I'd hire a marketing salesperson to keep developing my niche, following up on leads, and getting new prospect meeting schedules. Great. So these are multiple people. Sales call outreach. Get more leads into discovery call stage. Again, these are probably multiple people, but a great example. Someone to track metrics and flag outliers and let me know. I get proactive information that I can act on. Perfect. Bob saying, taking all my moments, content, meeting contents, input, output, and turning them into content. Engagement, that's how you measure them, and ultimately booked qualified prospects to meet with me. Great examples. Now imagine this. What if you could hire 30 people just for yourself? Not one assistant who does everything, but 30 specialists. One who handles your follow-ups, one who preps your meeting, one who monitors your pipeline, one who drafts your email, one who catches problems before you do. If you have 30 specialized people working for you, each doing one thing really well, what would you have them do? Take a moment, write down 5 of them. So I want you to write down the job title and a quick description of what they handle. Okay, and there's some examples on the screen. But think job title and a quick description of what they handle. And it's going to be the last last tab in your link. Okay, so who would you hire? Think about like 5 specialists. Look at the example. So meeting prepper briefs me before every call. Don't make it too complex. All right, report builder, Monday numbers, done. So who would you hire? Job safety analysis, SOP analyst. Perfect. Great. Sean, good example. Cool. Content editing, taking raw content, turning it into something I can immediately upload to YouTube video research, keeping up with the trends in the industry, someone helping manage my coding agent workflows and evolved over time. Great. Who would you hire? Job title and a quick description. What are they accomplishing for you? Incident investigation assistant. Great. So think about with that title, incident investigation assistant, what are they doing specifically? Are they providing a report? Are they collecting data? What are they doing? Inbox cleaner. Alerts me what's important and archives useful reference. Perfect. Great. Simple. Clear. What else is coming up? Content specialist for LinkedIn posts and any cold outreach. Meeting meaning maker. Collect the meeting notes, find the key items that only I could take action on, put to-dos on my schedule to make sure they're done and communicated. Great. KPI report manager. Compile and disseminate. Great. Good. You're getting into more specificity. And we want specialized. Yeah, let's look at that comment. So funny you asked everyone who would hire to do the work we either don't want to or have the skill set for. I came into the chat and was going to ask, where do I find someone who's complementary? Great. If you want to hire more people like you, just think about the specific things. So what are let's say 3 things or 5 things that you do and you want more people to do? That's great. That's completely valid. Tech researcher. Keep me up to date on new tech matters in my space. Human experience design, interface designers, security research and remediation, analytical market researcher, sales and marketing, targeting analyst, full-time recursive systems analyst, and automation designer. CEO, handle my CFO, create budgets and pays bills. Social media managers, handle all social media, measure engagements. Product research manager, keeps product relevant and updated. Security manager, keep all apps and servers clean and updated. Great example. Now, you've just outlined the start of your specialist agent team, your team of digital employees. And here's how they work. I want to define agent for the purpose of this exercise. So an agent has 3 parts. First, the brain. That's its identity, who it is, its knowledge about the company, its memory of what it's learned over time. The prompt tells its role and the boundaries. The content gives it organizational knowledge, and the memory is what it picks up when it does the work. The second is we have skills. This is how the agent does its work. Think standard operating procedures and playbooks, step-by-step procedures, scoring criteria, voice and tones, how it communicates, and so on. The third is the agent's tools. So this is what it has access to. Salesforce, HubSpot, Stripe, email, Slack, spreadsheet. Each agent gets only the tools it needs. A sales agent doesn't touch finance data. A content agent can't send emails. So an agent is a brain plus skills plus tools, just like hiring a person. Knowledge, training, and access. Our philosophy is specialists, not generalists. So think hundreds of agents. Each one does one thing really well, not one giant brain that tries to do everything. And why? A big monolithic agent is a brick wall. Pull one brick out and the whole thing caves. You can't debug. You can't control quality. You can't change anything safely. Specialized agents are more like Lego blocks. Swap one out, the rest keep working. Grade each one independently. If something breaks, you know exactly which agent. Update one without touching the rest. Now, look at what you've built today. Your AAA map. Four things you walked in without and walk out with. Your robot task, automate it and reclaim those hours. Your Iron Man moment, compress the prep and amplify the judgment. Who you would hire, hand it off, measure it, walk away. And your no-go zone, protect it. That's your edge. This is your project list. It's a blueprint, not a wish list or a backlog. Bring it to the next meeting, pick the one with the cleanest math and start there. And at the end of this, I'll share some of your responses. You can all see what everyone submitted. So across all of this, every dollar is invested in AI returns $3.70 according to current research. But honestly, the time is not why I'm here. The money is not why I'm here. The real return is your time. Now, one last framework I want you to think about is the onion. So each layer depends on the one beneath. And automation creates the clean data and reliable systems that augmentation needs. Augmentation creates the organizational knowledge that autonomous agents need. If you skip a layer, it collapses. Like I had a client, it's a logistics company, about 60 million in revenue. The CEO wanted to skip to the future. So he deployed an autonomous agent for customer onboarding. It cost $120,000. And 6 weeks later, it was a disaster. The agent worked fine, but it failed because customer data lived in 3 different systems that didn't talk to each other. 7 undocumented steps lived in 2 people's heads, and he built a penthouse on a vacant lot. We're not making that mistake. You want to build from the inside out. Now, I want to show you a couple of examples. This is one of the things we built at CTOX, which is our operating system. So this is real live code, live data, live agents. So I'll walk you through a few examples. And this is what I see as the future for a lot of companies. So the ability to build your own custom operating system that integrates the work between humans and agents. So what we did, so this is, for example, this is real, this is live. This is, for example, how we look at our company right now. So every department has their own little tab, which they operate in. We developed custom tools for them to do the work. So if the sales team comes in the morning, they click in, they immediately go to their overview, and then they have all of their tools. So for them, they just work. So let's say I can look at somebody just had a call with one of our advisors, and I can see what is the insights that came from that call, areas of improvement, coaching recommendations, what are different action items that came off from that meeting, a more detailed report that then we can take into everything else in our system. We have a really nice insight engine that basically looks at all the calls, all the data, so we can have marketing ideas, and we can have script issues, and we can have content issues. And if somebody's talking about a challenge with the program or challenge with one of our advisors, we know all the things, and it creates all the data we need to improve. Now, the salesperson does the call, the advisor does the call, but then everything else in between is handled by agents. So agents do the insights. Agents create the follow-ups. Agents create the content ideas. So for them, they just work natively with their tools. They're not understanding, or they don't care rather, that they have agents do the work. Now, each department has their agents, right? So we talked about highly specialized, right? So in this case, we have the calendar capacity report. It just looks at calendar and kind of what can we do there. The daily sales update, it posts the last week deals, post current month-to-date deals with everything we need. And for every agent, it has their own unique soul, context, memory, and so on. And we were able over time to really replace a lot of third-party tools. So now we don't need it. Same thing for marketing. The marketing team can log in. They can see all of their stuff. If we're producing a new podcast, the team can decide to load in a new podcast based on whatever we're doing. They can plan the content. Once we upload the video, we have agents that automatically edit, that automatically publish based on our requirements. So for the humans doing the work, this is very frictionless. This is not the fact that they're handing off to an agent is irrelevant. It happens automatically because the tasks are either picked up by a human or picked up by an agent. So one of the tools, and like within this operating system, we developed an entire agent lab that basically comes up with new ideas for agents as we do the work. And we actually develop a tool. So I want you to see this one as an example. So we call it DejaDo.ai. And it's a discovery tool. So you can go here, you can connect your email, your Slack, calendar, Outlook. We also support ScreenPipe. And we're adding more things like meeting transcript and some tools to scan text also in your local machine and so on. Once you connect, it basically runs through this process. So this is, for example, my CTOX email. Once I connected it, it figures out, okay, what are all the hats I'm wearing? So I'm wearing the founder CEO, I'm wearing the head coach, I'm wearing sometimes a sales lead or product builder. These are all the different people that I interact with. And once it finds the hats, it figures out what are all the opportunities, what are all the agentic opportunities that exist for this role. So whatever you see here is completely inferred. So there was no conversation, there was no interaction. It was just connecting email, Slack, and it basically figures out what are different problems and promises. So a promise is it's something that's supposed to happen in the future more than once. So if we look at these groups, for example, we can look at this one. Okay, sort and follow up on every inbound lead and intro. So this proposal is it can watch your inbox for new introduction, partnership requests, and inquiries, scores them, assign next step, and make sure nobody falls through the cracks. What's the evidence for this? Found 43 messages across 8 conversations in 4 separate intro threads. It's unclear who owns the next step. Found 38 messages in a single contact form thread. At least 4 near identical following up messages were sent, so on and so forth. I can actually see the emails that it's referring to. I can see all the skills that this agent is going to need. It's going to need to read the inbox with this prompt. It's going to need to score. And notice how specialized the skill is. It's very, very specific. These are the tools it's going to need. It's going to need a tool to read my email, my calendar, my Slack. Here are the boundaries it identified, like never send a reply without Lior reviewing it first, never share pricing or make commitments on Lior's behalf. And here's the success metrics. Here's how you know that this agent has been successful. Once you see all that, you can see the build kit. So if you want to take this process and improve it, the agent can do these things. This is the part that stays human. This is the system prompt. This is its soul. This is its requirements. If you want to rethink it, maybe you can save 6 hours a week. And the agent then does these things. That's what the human does. And this is the prompt. And if you want to just automate the existing process, then this is what that looks like. It also gives you a view of the before and after. So how it works today in each step. What happens? This happens sometimes. Nobody ever scores. Nobody assigns a single owner, so on and so forth. But with the new flow, here's what the agent can do. It can scan it every weekday. It can score it automatically. It can check whether somebody already replied. And then there's a human part. Lior, the assigned owner, reviews the drafted reply, approves or edits, and so on and so forth. So you can see kind of the before and after for it. And if this is good, you can export it out. So you can download it. You can deploy it as a skill file, to crew, to bottler, whatever it is, or just copy the system prompt and do it. If you have a team, it's nice because then you can invite your team with an invite code, and it can analyze how does it work between team members. So in this case, vendor and partnership pitch filter, there's a 4-person inbox overlap. So Lior, Marissa, and Jeremy are each independently built. Lior and 2 separate agents. Marissa and Jeremy are each independently building logic to filter, log, and decline unsolicited vendor partnership pitches. So you can see how with a team, because it can look at the same task across multiple people, what might be interesting. And then you can also look at their accounts and see what popped up for them. And that all is to say, because we want you to think, where else can you introduce agents right now to your workflow, right? DejaDo, for example, and you can do what you saw with DejaDo, you can do with your Claude Code and any automation. It's basically a sequence of prompts once you set up the database and you do the intake. But imagine everybody on your team doing it, and you have 40 to 60 opportunities per person, and you really get thousands of specific evidence-based opportunities across the company. So it's a roadmap. It's not a wish list. So with this, I want to tell you really what I said at the beginning. It's not the end of work. This is the end of boring work. The people who thrive in these transitions are not the ones who code. They're the ones who think clearly about how work should flow. And that's really every person on this call. And time is the ultimate form of love. That's true at home and at work. When you have time, you have space to care, to think, to create, to lead. The end of boring work is not just a slogan, it's really a choice. And that choice is yours. So you can live life by design and not by default. I'm going to let Cole be a master with his training, and then I'd love to do a Q&A with you at the end. I'll keep those links open so I can share with you what everybody filled up. And we can share some more ideas as they come up.
All right, cool. That was fantastic, Lior. I learned a lot from you, and that says a lot because of how much I'm in the space myself. So thank you very much. And now I get to piggyback off of a lot of what you talked about. So I'll go ahead and get my screen shared, and then I'll dive into things myself. So Lior, he just talked about optimizing an organization for AI. And one of the most important parts of optimizing organization for AI is how do you optimize building software, right? And like that's really where I am specialized. So let me go ahead and add my screen here. There we go. All right. Right. So this is actually, by the way, the first time I've done a live stream before with another person. So I'm using a brand new software. It's called StreamYard, if anyone's wondering. It actually works really, really well, but still have to get used to the platform. So anyway, one of the big backstage pieces of work, going back to what Lior was talking about, is writing code. And I know that might actually sound kind of crazy for some of you engineers who have been coding your entire life. And so I'm here saying now that our job as an engineer is to no longer write the code, but to do the higher leverage tasks like the planning and validating. And that's the framework that I want to cover here. And also for product managers in the room, there's a lot that I have to say that applies to you guys as well. There's a 3-part process that I want to walk through with you right now. We're going to start with how do we ideate around the work that we want our coding agents to do for us for building literally anything, a website, funnel, any kind of platform. This is going to apply no matter what you want to build. And then we'll get into for the developer when we are knocking out a piece of work like a ticket in Jira or handling a GitHub issue or starting a new application. What does that process look like? It's using the PIV loop. That's my core methodology that we'll cover. And then we'll get into the system evolution mindset. And this is probably the most powerful part of the entire system, how we make our coding agents more powerful over time as we run into issues using them. And one disclaimer that I want to give before we get into everything here is that a lot of what I'm covering here is a training that I do for organizations. But usually for them, it's more of a 4-hour session where I really get into the entire process. And so I've compacted everything down into 1 hour to share with you guys right now. So a high level overview, but I'm still going to get really practical with you guys. And I'm going to give you a live demonstration of everything here, so that you can come out of this 1 hour knowing exactly what the process looks like that you can mold for yourself to go from idea all the way to production code with the help of AI coding assistants. And the important thing here is we're not vibe coding because we are putting ourselves in the driver's seat along the way through all of the planning and validation that we do. That is the core framework that I'm going to cover with you. And really, this whole process, it applies no matter the tools that you're using. And so I'm going to be using Claude Code for our event here, just because that is my favorite AI coding assistant, at least right now. And then I'm going to be using Jira as my place to manage all of the work that we scope out with the help of Claude Code. But this entire process is going to work if you're using, Codex with GitHub, or you're using GitHub Copilot with Linear. Really, it's just you need to have one place to manage your work and organize your work, and then one place to work with a large language model to create your code. That's the only requirement that I have here, even if you do want to follow along. And also in the description for our live stream here, if you click into the description, I'm just like looking at it on my left monitor here, I have a link to a GitHub repository. And this GitHub repository has the demonstration application that we're going to be building on top of today. And then it also has all of the resources that I'm going to be showcasing here, my rules, my commands, my skills. We'll talk about what those look like, and I'll use some of them live. But a lot of that lives here in the .clod folder. So if you see any part of my process that you really want to steal for yourself, please feel free to do so. This repository is open source, ready for you to come in and take any of the skills or all the commands that I'm using to package up my workflows. And so really, we're not going to be doing a lot of manually typing today, because it's going to be, here are the prompts that I've been using time and time again. I have it as a command that I can reference and have the coding agent go through that procedure that I'm using pretty much every single time that I'm delegating the coding to AI. And so I guess really just like the last thing I want to say before we get into the meat of it here is that there are a lot of frameworks out there for AI coding. I just want to like call out, like, I know that a lot of people, oh, someone said my camera is frozen. Hold on, let me take a look there. Is my camera frozen for everybody? Because it looks good on my end, but let me know if it's better now, and then I'll continue. Just watching the chat to see. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Oh, hopefully my camera's not frozen either. I'll continue once I get the not frozen any longer. Working now. Okay, good. All right, cool. So now it's unfrozen. All right, good. Cool. So yeah, the last thing I want to say before we get into things here is there are a lot of frameworks for AI coding available to us that are open source. So maybe you guys have explored GitHub Spec Kit or BMAD or Cloudflow or GSD, Gastown. I mean, I could go on naming dozens and dozens of them. There are all of these opinionated strategies out there right now to guide you through a process kind of similar to what I'm going to show you here. Like, this is a process for researching, then planning, then building, then validating, with AI coding assistance driving a lot of it. And I have a lot of respect for these platforms. There are a lot of really powerful, timeless software engineering strategies built into them. But at the same time, a lot of these frameworks are very over-engineered. They try to do too much at once. And it's really difficult to take an existing off-the-shelf framework and mold it to your software development lifecycle. So like I said, I do a lot of corporate trainings where I teach companies how to take something very foundational like this and mold it to their existing practice, because you don't want to just throw out the window the entire process your team has already been using for working with coding agents. Instead, you want to mold the process around AI, but you still are going to have some of your conventions in the way that the team works. It's not really realistic to just throw everything out the window. But when you're using something like BMAT or GSD, you're trying to take an off-the-shelf solution, you're kind of forced to do that because it's so bloated that it's hard to like really make your own. And so what I teach here is simple on purpose, because I want to show you the foundation that you can then build on top of to mold it into your process for planning, your process for QA, whatever that looks like for each stage of the software development lifecycle. And so we'll start with planning here. And planning, this part actually applies to product managers just as much as developers. So a lot of organizations that I work with, the trainings that I do, they'll bring their entire PM team into the training as well, because they're actually the first ones that have a touch point with the coding agent when you're planning the next scope of work for an application. So the product manager is the one initially doing, let's say the sprint planning. And it's important for them, just like the developers, to work with coding agents to speed up that process. Here's the application that we have right now. Here are the bugs we want to fix and the issues that we want to build, or the new features we want to build for this sprint. And same thing applies to greenfield development. You're going to be building that initial scope of work for the MVP of an application. And this process applies to both. And so what I'm going to do with you guys right now is I am going to show this diagram at a high level, just walk through it really quickly with you, this component right here. And then we're going to get into something very practical. I'm going to go into my code base here, and we are going to go through everything live. I'm going to show you what it looks like for brownfield development to take an existing application, plan out a brand new sprint with a bunch of new sets of work we want to perform. And then I'm going to pick one of those, and we're going to go through the piv loop, the process that we're going to repeat for every single Jira ticket. And again, that could be a GitHub issue, it could be a linear ticket, whatever that is. And so you'll see the full process end to end. There's a lot of value that I have packed into the hour for you guys here. And I see in the chat here that apparently my screen freezes when I switch. That's good to know. I'm not sure if there's anything I can do with that, but hopefully the rest of like at least my audio and my screen share is smooth. So, okay, the beginning of the process here is as simple as it possibly can be. You are going to open up your coding agent, like I'll just pop open Claude Code right here, and you're just going to have a conversation about what you want to build. There is no structure at first. And like I said earlier, it is simple on purpose because I want the barrier to entry for you to be so incredibly low that you begin just brainstorming ideas with the coding agent, and then we're going to evolve to more structure over time. And that's the process that I'm going to share with you as I start to bring in some skills and commands that I have in my AI layer, in my AI coding system. And so first of all, when you have this conversation, you just do what I like to call a brain dump. Like most of the time, I'll just use a speech to text tool so that I just talk. I go on and on about what I want to build. At this point, it is helpful to be as specific as possible. And so you would say, like, this is my application. Here are the new things that I want to build. Here are the bugs I want to fix. And then you go into the clarifying stage. And so the most important part when you're first planning work with a coding agent is to reduce the number of assumptions that it is making. Because honestly, most of the time when a coding agent does a bad job, it's not like the code is just broken. It's that it's not aligned with what you are actually looking to build. And really the responsibility is on you there because it is your role and your responsibility to make sure the coding agent is really on the same page with you for what you are building. So it's a lot of just curating this context with the help of the coding agent, being very specific for what you want to build. And so the most powerful strategy here, and you'll see this in action in just a little bit, is to have the coding agent ask you questions. Like we will specifically ask it to ask us questions. And you can go through this process for a good 20, 30 minutes, even beyond that, if you really want to set the stage well, going into the development later on. So product managers, this is your job when you're working with Claude Code. And even if you're a solo developer shipping things without a product manager, this is still an important step to go through. It's very important to stay high level at first. We're not getting into the weeds right now for how we're going to test things or what files we have to change in our code base. At this point, we're just trying to figure out what are the requirements that we need to translate into code. And then we'll have a separate planning process where we're getting more into, okay, here's how we're actually going to code it and the parts of the code base that we need to edit. So at this point, we're very, very high level. And then after you have a conversation with the coding agent where you figured out exactly what you want to build, what is our scope of work for this sprint or this new application, then it's time to create your AI layer. And I have this marked as optional here, just because when you are working on an existing code base, you might already have that AI layer already created. But if you don't have it, I highly recommend investing a lot of time upfront building this. Now, for our 1 hour here, it's not like I have a lot of time to really get into best practices for building your global rules and your skills and commands. But I'm just saying this is the part of the workflow where you will create that. And so your global rules, these are the conventions, the rules that you always want your coding agent to follow. Like here are our coding styles, here's our testing strategy, our logging strategy, things like that. And then your commands, we're going to see a lot of these in action today. And your skills, these are your reusable workflows. So anytime you find yourself prompting something more than 3 times, you should turn it into a command or skill, because that's just a prompt that you're going to load into your coding agent when the time comes. Like, this is my process for planning. This is my process for creating PRDs or stories in Jira, for example. That way we don't have to type things out. And it's a reusable workflow that we can share and create a standard across with our team. Very, very important. So we don't want to do manual prompting as much as possible. Turn things into something in the AI layer that you can invoke, right? Like we can take a command and skill and say, /plan. Now we are going into our planning process. And so that actually goes into the first command that we'll use here. And again, I'll show this all in action in just a little bit. So the first command is a process guiding the coding agent from an unstructured conversation into a structured PRD. Like I said, we go from exploration to structure so that we have a single document that is produced from this command that outlines all of the core sections for and the PRD is short for product requirement document. So this is like the initial scope of work for an application if we're doing greenfield development, or these are all of the tickets that we need to handle if it's a new sprint that we are planning for in Jira, for example. And then I can take the PRD and also have Claude Code split it up into individual pieces of work to create as my Jira tickets. We'll see this in action. And so it handles literally everything. It parses this document. It figures out what are the individual phases or pieces of work that we should create as tickets. And then we'll even use the Jira MCP server to create those things so that we don't have to do that backstage work like Lior was talking about of creating those tickets in Jira. We want to have our coding agent handle all of that administrative work. And so we end with tickets in Jira, and then we can pick one of them. So this is where, the product manager would hand things over to the developer to pick a ticket and then go into the full piv loop. This is the full process we go through to handle individual sets of work with our coding agent. So we'll get into this next, but first I want to show you a live demonstration of our ideation phase. And so I'll go over to my code base now. And I'll just describe very briefly the application that I have for a demonstration here. And so this repository, again, I have it linked in the description. I also linked it in the chat. Actually, I didn't link it in the chat, so I'll do that right now. So let me go out, copy this, and I'll paste this in our chat here. If you guys want to just poke around the resources that I have for you guys or even follow along, you can feel free to do that. The application for my demonstration is just a quick poll builder. So, you put in your question like how experienced are you with AI coding? And then we have our options here, like I'm a beginner, I'm intermediate, or I am advanced. All right, cool. And then I create a poll. And then I have this link. So actually, you guys can go and fill this out right now if you want to. I'm actually genuinely curious if anyone wanted to go to this link. Actually, that's hilarious. This is localhost. You can't go and vote because this is not a URL that you guys can visit. So psych, you guys can't participate in the poll, unfortunately. But yeah, the point of this application is that it's super simple because I'm going to be focusing on the process, not focusing on the application itself, right? So I want something very quick to build on top of so that I can quickly go through how I create stories, handle tickets, go through the piv loop and the system evolution. And so what I'm going to do to begin is I'm going to go into Claude Code and I'm going to plan my next fictitious sprint. So we have this very basic application right now where we can create a poll. And if I actually had the application deployed, then people could use it and go and answer the poll. But there are a lot of features that are missing. And so I have a prompt prepared ahead of time that I'm just going to paste in right now, just so that you guys don't have to watch paint dry as I give my initial brain dump. But again, this is your point where you just dump all of your ideas of what you want to build, being as specific as possible. So even if you wanted to specify things like your tech stack and your architecture, if you're more technical, this is where you do that. But even if you are less technical and you are, a product manager, for example, you can still stay pretty high level here and just describe the features that you want to build. And so I'm saying, like, here's my brain dump for phase 2, like the next thing that I want to build on top of the application. Let's say I want to build a live presentation mode. Like right now in the poll builder, when I can't really like see answers come in live. Like if I click see current results, I'd have to refresh the page in order to see new entries. I also want to build a QR code generation, multi-question polls, multiple choice questions. Like there's like a lot of things that I want to build on top. This is my next sprint that I want to, my end goal is to have all these things created as Jira tickets that I could then pass on to developers or pass on to my coding agents if I am a developer. And so I've described everything here. Usually if I'm not just doing a live demonstration, I would make this prompt a lot longer, but I just wanted to keep it concise right now. And then the important thing here, this is what I was saying in the diagram. Before you write anything, ask me clarifying questions one at a time using the Ask User Question tool. And so now this is where I'm going to make sure that I get on the same page with my coding agent. And so one at a time, it's going to ask me these questions. And in Claude Code, we have this Ask User Question tool where we can see these questions pop up with multiple choice answers for us. So it's really easy to blitz through things, because a lot of times what it recommends is actually what I'm going to go with, but it still gives me the opportunity if I want to say like, hey, no, you're wrong here. Like, let's actually do it this way instead. So we can, remove that incorrect assumption that it was making. And for other coding agents that don't have this specific tool, this whole process is still going to work. It's just going to be a little bit slower because you'll have to type out each of your answers more like you're just chatting with an agent. But it still works in exactly the same way. So it's asking us questions here like, how should real-time updates work? I'll just go with what it recommends here just for the sake of speed, but also you have this option to chat with it. So for each individual thing, if you really want to dive deep with the coding agent, which a lot of times I would recommend you do, you have the opportunity to do that. And of course, how deep you go does depend on how technical you really are. Like right there, how should real-time updates work? That is a pretty technical question. So if you want to just go with what it recommends, that's definitely okay. But if you have that knowledge and like really understand the architecture of the code base, it's just more power to you. You're able to really make sure that you clear assumptions. Otherwise, if you're more on the product manager side, you might have a couple of wrong assumptions that sneak into your Jira tickets, but that's why you work with the developers as you're planning things, right? Like you'd have your sprint meeting where you'd make sure you clarify these kinds of things. But the goal is just for the coding agent to help us with that starting point of having all the context in Jira ready for developers to refine and pick up and work on. And so for the sake of demo, I'm going to say, let's end the questions here, just because sometimes it can go on for, a good 10, 15 minutes asking us a lot of questions. I'll allow it to make some assumptions for the sake of speed. But at this point, I've already shown you what I need for what this process generally looks like. And so at the end of our chat here, this context, this short-term memory for Claude Code is what we're going to turn into the PRD. So we are about to run our first command where we create that product requirement document. The input is the conversation. The output is a single document, a source of truth that we could, then upload to Confluence or check into source control, wherever we want to store that. And then we can create the Jira tickets from that. All right, so that was the last question there. Now it's taking in my message. So it will move on to creating our PRD. And Claude Code is smart enough to know the capabilities are available. So when I've gone through this process, a lot of times it'll just go right to loading the create PRD skill, and it'll walk itself through creating that document in exactly the structure that I am looking for. And so I'll go ahead and open that so we can see ahead of time what that actually looks like. And again, all of these commands that I'm about to walk through are available in the GitHub repository that I have linked in the description. So I'll go to create PRD. That is our first command. And again, commands and skills are really just procedures. They are prompts that we get to load in real time whenever we want. And so create PRD. This is going to generate a comprehensive product requirements document. We get to also specify like where it also outputs this file. So commands and skills support arguments. So that's how we can make things dynamic. And we'll talk about arguments quite a bit because most of my procedures have arguments. So I can make them specific to what I am doing right now. And the main thing that we are outlining in this PRD command is the structure that we're looking for. Like we want every PRD to have an executive summary, a mission, target users. This is a lot of product manager speak. So if you come from the product manager space, really this is your opportunity to take how you already write PRDs and make it so your coding agent does it in the exact same thing. Again, the foundations that I'm laying for here in this process is not for you to completely have a blank slate for your software development lifecycle, but to take your best practices that you've established as a team and teach it to your agents. That's what we're doing with skills and commands. And so your PRDs are going to look the same, but your agent is saving you hours and hours and hours because it gets to generate this based on our conversation. And so right here, like what I can do is it kind of went through this process itself, like it loaded the skill automatically, but I'll just show you, like if I wanted to invoke it myself, I can just do create PRD. And then I can specify the file name as an argument like this. It's just when you invoke something, or similar to when you invoke something in the command line for all you developers. So we just have space separated arguments for anything that we want the command to respect, like where we're going to output it. So we're going to have something in the .agents folder. It'll just be like a PRD markdown file. And then of course we could, like use the Jira MCP server to upload, or the Atlassian MCP server to upload it to Confluence. We could upload this document to Google Drive or put it as context in a GitHub issue, however you want to, store this artifact that is like the initial source of truth for that new application or that new sprint that we are planning. And so once we have our PRD created, and it's going to take a little bit because it's generating a larger document here. You can see that Claude is currently thinking through the structure. So it's taking this conversation, reasoning about everything that we have discussed here, and then creating a document from that. Once we have our PRD, we are going to create our stories. Now, you could do this as a single command where you create the PRD and the stories all with a single call to Claude Code. The reason I have these separated is because once you have the PRD created, it is a good time for you to validate things yourself. So going back to the diagram here, it is important for us to delegate as much coding to the coding agent as we possibly can. That's the backstage work for developers now. But we want to remain in the driver's seat because every single artifact that our coding agent produces, whether it's a PRD or it's a set of code, we want to review that. And we want to have human in the loop so that we can iterate on anything. And so when we create our PRD, it's not good enough to just immediately create stories from that. Like, it's important for us to review the artifact and make sure that things are really aligned with what we are looking to do next. Because yes, we had it ask a bunch of clarifying questions, but maybe we didn't have it ask enough questions, or maybe it didn't quite understand our answers. That's why it's important for us to still review things. So I know that takes some time, and the promise with AI is that it speeds things up a lot. But even if you do take time refining the PRD with the coding agent, it's still going to save you so many hours compared to if you did this entire process yourself. And so for the create stories command, we run this after we have reviewed the PRD and maybe made some changes to it. And so for this command, we give it the path to our PRD. Obviously, we want Claude Code to know, like, this is the PRD that we want to create our stories from. And then we can also specify the Jira project and epic. And so what I have in Jira created ahead of time is I just have a simple project created with an epic that doesn't have any tasks in it right now. So this is what we're going to populate live in a little bit with our create stories command. And so I had to do a little bit of manual work to actually create the epic. But after that point, I'm not doing any work myself in the Jira platform. That's all backstage. I don't want to do that myself. And so I want to have a single process that goes from here are my ideas to everything is populated here. And it feels like magic every time this happens. So we'll get to that in a second, but obviously we need to have the PRD created first. And you can see that right now it's put a lot of tokens because it's in the middle of creating that file for us. So we just have to be patient. But that gives me some time here just to show you really quickly what we have in this command here. So first of all, we have a phase-by-phase procedure that we're walking Claude Code through. Again, commands are just prompts that we're having the coding agent run through. So we're having it load the PRD, because we can also run this in a separate Claude Code session if we don't want to run it in the same one. So we can load the PRD. That's all the context it needs. Then it's going to break down into stories. And I can render this so it looks a little bit nicer here. So we create a user story and we can specify the format as well. We can define the acceptance criteria. So just like we create the structure for the PRD in the create PRD command, we can do the same thing for the stories here. So your team probably already has a convention, or if you're a solo developer, you still probably have some kind of convention for how you want to create these artifacts. Here are my tasks, here are my issues, whatever that is. And so we bake that into the command. And that makes it more reliable, repeatable, and it makes it so that you don't have to have a brand new process that everyone is extremely uncomfortable with, right? Like, we want to make it easy to adopt these new tools and new processes. And so then we go on to the structure for each story. Here is exactly what you're going to create. Here's how we're going to order them. We even have some validation built in, so it kind of checks its own work to make sure that it has, fully extracted all the phases out of the PRD, for example. And then we have the output. We're going to save everything to Markdown documents. And then if we have the Jira integration, so I actually set this command up so that if you're not working with Jira, then you can still just work with the stories in local files. A lot of solo developers just manage their entire system with Markdown. And that's totally respectable. So this command works for that. But if we do have the Jira integration and we tell it how to check for that, then it's going to create everything in the epic that we specified in the argument here. So like if these things are filled in, and we'll see that in just a second. So, okay, we created our PRD. And so we can take a look at this. So this document, I'm not going to read through the entire thing right now. And my mouse just died actually. So hold on, I need to get a new mouse here. That's actually hilarious that my mouse dies in the middle of a live stream of all times. But okay, I have my new mouse handy. All right, so we have our PRD, and I'm not going to go through the entire thing right now because it's a pretty long document. The point of what I'm demonstrating right here is mainly to show you that the structure that we have laid out in the create PRD command is exactly what we see in our final PRD. So we have our executive summary, our mission, our target users, everything that I showed you in the Markdown here. And then we also have what is in scope. So for our phase 2 sprint, we want the multi-question polls, per user toggle, the full screen presenter presentation page, everything that we gave in our initial brain dump. So this PRD is the result of our conversation plus the create PRD process, right? Like those two things together, this is the baby of that. And so now this PRD, we can run through our create stories command. And this is the thing, is like after that initial brain dump, I'm really not doing much typing. I'm running commands, I'm answering questions. That's really all I have to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And like I said, you could do this in a separate context window if you wanted to, but I'm just going to do it right here because it was relatively short. So I'm not going to iterate on the PRD for the sake of speed here. So I mean, this is one moment where it's, do as I say, not as I do. But generally, if I am off camera and really working through my initial planning for something, I'm going to spend a lot of time looking through each section here and making sure that everything is as I intend. And so I'll run create stories with the path to my PRD. And then I have to give the ID of my Jira project and also the ID of my tag. And so for those of you who are using Jira, you just get that, like, this is the ID of your project. And then this is the ID of your epic. And then if you're doing something else like using GitHub or Linear, you're going to go through the exact same process. You're just going to use, the GitHub CLI to create issues instead of the Jira MCP server, or you're going to use the Linear MCP server. So again, it doesn't matter in the end what tool you're actually using. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. So it's going to break down, it's going to follow that exact process that I just showed you, breaking down the PRD. And then after a few minutes, it'll take a little bit of time for it to reason about that. We'll see all of the subtasks start to get populated here in Jira. And then at that point, we can have developers just pick them up and go through the piv loop that I'll cover with you guys next. And that's the beauty of it, is also you can have developers work on everything in parallel. They can assign themselves. You can also, use the Jira MCP server to have the developer get assigned automatically when it picks up a piece of work. You can create a system in your task management software where really agents are managing everything. It's kind of like the whole CTOX OS that Lior was showing you guys, where you have the agent managing all of the grunt work of organizing and all of the CRUD operations of creating tasks and updating them and assigning them and everything. We can have agents manage all of that with the Jira MCP server. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. If you go into Cloud Code and do /MCP, you can see that I have the Atlassian MCP server connected. So by the way, this also gives me access to Confluence, not just Jira. So if you wanted to store documents in Confluence, like you wanted to store the PRD in Confluence and then have a developer load that PRD with the Jira MC or the Atlassian MCP server, they can do that as well. And so if you are an Atlassian kind of shop where you have Confluence and you have Jira, you can have your coding agents manage all of that. And it's really the same thing no matter the platform that you're using. And so the way that I have this MCP server configured is just with this mcp.json file. And if you're curious how I set this up, this is the crazy thing, guys, is that you can have Claude Code help you with anything. it has access to its own documentation. So if you say, help me copy over Cole's commands, and you just give it the path, it can bring all that into your own project. Or you say, help me set up the Atlassian MCP server. It'll search the web, it'll pull the exact configuration, it knows to create a file called .mcp.json. It'll set up everything for you. The time in our world where we had to be technical to do these kinds of things is no longer here, right? Like a product manager, a QA engineer can use Claude Code to do any part of their job, just like a developer can, because you don't have to know how to run commands or set up MCP servers anymore. I mean, yes, it's still helpful just in case the coding agent trips up. So it's faster for a developer. But also coding agents are really good at debugging things. If the MCP server doesn't connect right away, you can ask it like, hey, I'm getting this error. Help me figure it out. Maybe like search the web for some more Atlassian documentation, for example. And so really for like all these things, I didn't configure that all myself. Like I have my repository of commands and skills. I pointed Claude Code there and I said, all right, Claude, for this AI transformation workshop that I'm doing with Lior, I want you to set up a brand new repository and bring in my resources and customize it to work with Jira instead of GitHub, for example. And it just did all of that for me. So a little bit meta there, but I hope that demonstration is cool just to see like how easy it is to get anything configured in your AI coding environment. And so for all these resources that I share with you, you don't even have to bring them in yourself. So we can see that it created all of the stories here. And then it asked me a question like, do you want to push to Jira now? So I said yes. And now it's going to take advantage of that Atlassian MCP server to populate everything. And so I don't think we'll have it yet. Let me refresh the page. But in just a second here, we'll start to see things get populated. I think it's in the middle of reasoning through that. Okay, yep. So we can see that the token count go up as it is formulating those tool calls, basically. So the agent is performing these operations under the hood. And then someone asked if I could share my diagram. Yeah, so one thing that I'll do after our workshop here is I'll get the diagram uploaded to this AI transformation workshop repository. I actually meant to do that ahead of time, so that's my bad, but I'll get that added here so that the full process that I'm walking through with you guys will be available as a reference. And we're almost done with the first step, by the way. And once we get into the piv loop, things go pretty quickly because we're doing so much of the work up front with our ideation. So we're getting to this stage right now where we are getting our tickets in Jira, and then we'll pick a ticket. And then this is where we just rip through the implementation with the piv loop. So, all right, let's go back to Claude and see where we are at. All right, calling Atlassian 7 times. You can also in Claude do Control-O so that you can see the full tool call if you want some more visibility into what it's doing. So it's using the create issue MCP tool. It's got my ID, the project, all the things that we specified as parameters like the epic. And the green circle here means that the tool call actually finished. So I'll do Control-O to decompress again, and then go back over. And now when I refresh, we'll see some or maybe even all of the issues created, or tickets, I should say. Take a look at that. So we don't have all of them yet. It's in the middle of running those tool calls, but we have things populated already. And the cool thing here is if we click into any one of these, like let's say I'll just click into the first one, for example, AT14. If I click into this, we have a lot of context given here in the ticket as well. So another really cool thing is like for a product manager, usually your description isn't even going to be this good because you don't have full context for the more technical details. So you can also use Claude to provide more context to the developers up front if you want to work with it to, create this kind of issue description. And of course, for the ticket descriptions, it's entirely up to you and your commands for what exactly you'd put here. Like in my create stories command, I specifically said I want the story and acceptance criteria. And then we could even add more context here. Like we could have some more research on how the coding agent would recommend doing this. We could put that as a comment here. Sometimes my Claude code will actually do that by itself. It's cool to see. So yeah, it's it's adding technical notes as comments to each of the issues. So not only are we creating issues, but we're providing more context as the coding agent has done some research for each of the implementations, like looking into the code base, providing those initial suggestions for how we build each one of these things. And so I'll let that run in the background here because that's not like super important for me to have finished before I go to the next thing for you guys. And the next thing is really like, let's just pick one of these and let's work on it, right? Like at this point, at an organization level, the product manager would take this list and send it over to the development team. You might have some scrum meeting or whatever to talk about these things and again, refine things if you need to like fix up any of these issues. And then you go on to the development. Or if you are a solo developer, then these might be GitHub issues that you're now going to handle one at a time. And so we just need to pick one of these to work on. And let's see. I'm trying to think like maybe the audience vote page would be a good one. As an audience, I want mobile first page that shows only active questions, lets me submit my answer, auto advances when the presenter moves on. That's a decent one. What else could I work on here? I mean, there's a lot of good features. I'm trying to like think of like the best one that would be good for a live demonstration. Presenter projection page. Actually, this is a good one here because that's actually what I was planning for my prep. So I want a full screen page that shows active questions, animated bar chart, real-time updates as things are coming in. That's definitely something that we're missing right now because this looks pretty bland for the results page. So we'll tackle this issue first. And the really cool thing is the input into our development process just is this issue. And that's actually something I've been doing a lot more recently with AI coding assistants is my input to writing the code is always some artifact. Like for me personally, I do a lot kind of as more of like a solo developer or I'm working on open source projects. So usually the GitHub issues is actually my entry point. So I'll put my artifacts here. I just wanted to show Jira because that's how so many teams work. But your Jira tickets, like that is the input. And so going into the piv loop here, we're going to go through a similar first step where we're just going to explore our solution. And the input into this is just one of the tickets that we pick. So the developer takes that work. You can use the Jira MCP to assign yourself. And then we start exploring the solution. And so for planning with AI coding, you always have two layers. You have the project level planning, and that's everything that we did here, right? Like this is like the PM level planning. And then you have the task planning, and that is the individual ticket level. And the important thing that I've already explained a little bit here, but I just want to be like really clear on this, is the layer one planning is higher level. Here are the features that we want to build or the bugs we want to fix. At this point, we are not digging into the code. Now that we're taking a single ticket for layer two, this is where we get more in the weeds of things. This is where we're going to analyze the code base, the documentation, figure out what parts of the code base we actually have to touch. We're starting to dive that deep. And it's really helpful for the coding agent to do this two-step process because then now that we're getting really into the weeds of things, we already have a lot of context for what we want to build overall. At this point, the ticket has translated the stakeholder or business requirements, whatever you want to call it. And we maybe even have some higher level recommendations for what part of the code we want to touch. And now we're just really getting into that. So just like creating our PRD, when we are creating the actual implementation, we start very unstructured. We're just going to have a conversation with our coding agent, figuring out how should we go about solving this problem, fixing this bug, implementing this new feature, whatever that is. And then we go from unstructured to structured. So this is very similar, like creating a plan for implementation is very similar to creating a PRD. And we're going to have a command for planning out the feature, just like we have a command for creating our PRD. And so I'll show you guys what this looks like right now. So I'm going to go back into my code base here, and I'm going to begin a brand new conversation. So let me escape out of this. I have a brand new conversation with Claude, because you can imagine that like you as a developer, you are picking up a single ticket and you don't have any context around creating the PRD or stories or anything. So we're going to pretend like this conversation doesn't exist because it's going to be someone else doing this, or maybe you doing it at a different time. So brand new conversation. The first thing that I always do when I am preparing for an implementation is I run what is called a prime command. So another example of if you're going to prompt a coding agent to do something over and over again, just turn it into a prompt, turn it into a command. because that way we don't have to type it out again. And so this prime command, quite simply, its job is to walk a coding agent through understanding the code base. We want to know what we already have to help us think about what comes next, right? So we're going to load external context, which this is where we can specify Confluence pages or Jira tickets that we want it to understand. In our case, we are actually going to specify a Jira issue, right? We're going to understand the code base from the lens of this Jira ticket, this new thing that we want to build. But also aside from that, we're just going to generally understand the code base. So we're going to study the features. We're going to study app routes. We're going to check recent Git commits. I love using Git as long-term memory for my coding agents. So a lot of times what you've done recently in a code base is going to help guide what you do next, because you're going to look at like the code patterns you followed for recent commits and things like that. This is a very, very powerful part of any new conversation with a coding agent. And obviously, the steps that you want your coding agent to go through to analyze the code base is very custom to your code base. So all of the commands that I have here are starting points for you, but you're always going to get the most out of them if you customize the commands to your process, your architecture, your code bases. And so I'll start by running a /prime here. And one of the arguments that we have is a comma separated list of Jira issues. And so, for example, going back to our browser here in Jira, I just want to use this issue right here. So the ID for it is AT23 for our presenter projection page. So I'll do /prime and then just AT23. So it's going to understand the entire code base, but also from the lens of this issue. So first it'll use the Atlassian or Jira MCP server to pull that context. I can do Control-O and we can see right here that first it's listing accessible resources, and then it's going to call the tool to get that specific issue. It's performing a bunch of reads here, also looking at the Git logs in parallel. There's just a ton of context loading that is doing at the exact same time here. Now you want to be careful to not load too much context into your coding agent, because it's not like you want 50% of your coding agent's context window to be just loaded with a bunch of research it's doing. But we definitely want to load in the core files and the core history of what we've done recently. And so if you ever want to, tweak that lever of how much context you're bringing into a session up front, it's just you change the prime command, right? Like you change this over time. Like maybe you only load in the first part of a Jira issue, or you only read from this part of the code base. It's totally up to you for how you formulate your commands to optimize things for your process. So here we go, project context loaded. We are going to be handling the presenter projection page. So it pulled full context there. Gives me a quick summary of my code base. And yeah, I think we're good to go. Though it actually says something interesting here. So this is really cool. This is a good live teaching moment. It is able to recognize, based on querying my state in Jira, that there are some blockers that we need to take care of before we could really go on to AT23. So it understands the dependency map. That is actually one of the things that I have built into Create Stories here, where it can help you understand dependencies. So maybe we would actually have to handle AT22 with a QR code first. And I think this is something that we'll take on. So maybe we'll do like, okay, look at AT22. What do we need to implement for that, right? We're starting very unstructured in our planning here. We're actually shifting gears right away, which is totally okay, but we're just going to have it get a little bit of understanding of this feature that we want to build, and we'll start to ideate there. So we're going to explore how we want to build this, understand the code base, and then get into that structure plan that will go and send into implementation. And so at this point, we have full context from the issue, but now we just do a little bit of exploration. And what this looks like totally is up to your own process. In fact, this is one of the things that I don't actually have as a command, because it's very free form at this point. So I can, for example, go into my speech text tool and say, all right, let's build AT22. I want you to spin up a few sub-agents to research the code base and help me ideate around how I would build this new feature into our poll application. So just like a really quick prompt here, and also showing you sub-agents, because sub-agents is something that I use all of the time for research. If you aren't familiar, Subagents is basically a way for you to spin up a sub process, another agent that runs under the hood to go and look at a bunch of things or perform a bunch of work and then report back a summary to our main Claude Code agent here. And it's really powerful for research because when we are exploring a code base or doing web research, we are loading in tens of thousands of tokens of information. Like you can see that this one already loaded in 32,000 tokens. We are going to completely overwhelm our main agent if we had it do all of the research by itself. And with research, you really only need a quick summary at the end, right? Like here are generally the files that we have to edit. Or if you're doing web research, like here are the core articles that you should read that would help with best practices for this tech stack. So we've already used over 100,000 tokens here, but we only have a few thousand tokens that are returned back to our main agent. And so yes, with Claude Code, we now have the 1 million token limit with Opus, and there are a lot of other models through Codex and GitHub Copilot and everything where you have 1 million tokens. But here's the thing, just because you can fit 1 million tokens into a large language model does not mean that you should, because they get overwhelmed just like people do. So we want to deploy strategies for managing context well. Subagents is one of the best strategies for that. So we just have to wait for these 3 exploration agents to finish, and then our main agent will get back a summary so it can reason. We can see that these are all done now. So it'll reason about what these subagents did, and then it'll provide me a final output here with its recommendation for how we can handle this Jira ticket. And so at this point, going back to our diagram here, we're still at this initial exploration, right? Like we're going to explore ideas, architecture, concepts, tech stack. I'm not going to go through each one of these things right now for the sake of speed, but this is our chance to ask questions. Or like we did when we created the PRD, have it ask us questions as well. Because it's important to remove assumptions going into writing the actual code. It might even be more, well, probably not more important than assumptions in the PRD, because the PRD is so high stakes, but it is very important as well. So we go through this process where once we feel confident that we're on the same page with the coding agent, then we'll run a command that'll create a structured markdown document for our plan. We want, again, we want the output of our planning process to be a single artifact. And that artifact is going to contain all of the information that the coding agent needs to do the actual implementation. And so I'll show what that looks like in a little bit, but first I want to actually invoke the command to create the plan, and then I'll explain more how it works, just so that we can have things move along well for us here. So here's the synthesis with real decisions to make. Here's what we know, okay, and 3 decisions worth making before coding. So it's asking me some questions here. I'm going to blitz past these for the sake of demonstration, but it is worth taking the time with this usually. So I'll do /plan. This is my command where I can now describe the feature that I want to build. So I'm just going to say here, go with your recommendations and create the plan for AT22. So I'm just going to give it permission here to just pick whatever it wants. Usually, though, it would be worth taking your time and answering these things and having it ask you more questions as well. So while this planning command runs, not to be confused with the plan mode in Claude Code, this is a separate command that I have created right here. It's very similar to the create PRD plan, where we have phases laid out, like here's the research you should do initially, explore the code base, make sure you have full understanding for how we're going to implement it, then create the plan file. So just like we created a prd.md, we're now creating a plan.md. And it has our structure. So we want a summary, a user story. It's going to be similar to the PRD, but now we're getting into the weeds of how we're actually going to implement it. And so, for example, one thing that we definitely didn't have in our PRD command is the patterns to follow. Like here's how we're coding things. Here are the files that need to be changed. Here's the task order, everything we're going to execute, down to the individual level of the files that we're going to create and update, or maybe the commands that we're going to run for testing. So also laying out up front, how do we want our coding agent to validate its own work? Because when we get into the implementation, we're going to send this plan into the coding agent. We are going to delegate all of the coding to the coding agent. And the only reason that I'm comfortable doing that is because I still find myself in the driver's seat because I'm a part of the planning process. I'm iterating on the plan. I'm doing the exploration and having it ask the right questions. And so we'll have it write the code, and then we'll also have it do some of the validation, right? Like we can have the coding agent right after it does the implementation. We can have it write the unit tests, write the integration tests, do the linting and the type checking, can take care of all of these things. Not that it's going to be perfect, but the point is we want it to take care of as much validation as possible so that by the time control passes back to us for our human validation, there's less that needs to be corrected, right? We want to reduce us being the bottleneck for actually shipping the code that we're creating with the help of our coding agents. And so I'll jump back over to the code base here, and we can see that our plan file is created. I'll take a look at this really quick. Just another one of those things that I don't want to spend the time iterating on too much right now. But we have the summary of our work. We have the decisions that we've locked in. These are the things that we would have been working with the coding agent to establish. And then we even have like the individual files that need to be created and updated. And then we have the task list. So usually the task list you don't create as Jira tickets, right? Because this is like so granular that this is for a single coding agent implementation. So you let the coding agent handle an internal task list as it is writing the code. And then we have the self-validation. So it's going to be running the type checking and linting and unit testing. We could also have it do end-to-end testing if we want to use browser automation tools with, the agent browser CLI, for example. So that's actually one of the skills that I have for you guys here. I can spin up the browser and navigate through it and like create polls and vote on the polls just like a user would. And so for the sake of speed, I won't do that, but you can have coding agents do very, very end-to-end testing. You want it to validate as much as possible. So the important thing here is once you have iterated on the plan and you're confident in everything, you actually don't do the implementation right here. We want to start a brand new session with Claude Code. So I'm going to open up a fresh blank slate with Claude. The reason that I want to do this is because when you are working with AI coding assistants, you want to make sure that they are as focused as possible. And it's important to be focused in order to be focused to do your planning and implementing in separate sessions. Because also the coding agent has probably built up a lot of bias throughout this conversation as we've been working with it. We want it to have a fresh set of eyes on the problem going into implementation. And so, of course, I have an execute command. And so all I have to do is /implement, and then I give it the path to the plan that I created in the prior session. And the whole point of this markdown artifact is that it has all of the context that the coding agent needs to implement, because it has the summary, it has the recommended files to change in the task list, the validation strategy. There's no reason for us to stay within this other context window in the first place. So I can send off this command that's going to read the plan, and then it's going to walk through the process I have in the implement command to do the implementation and the validation. And this command that I have for implementation is actually very, very concise. It's only like a couple of hundred lines long here, because really it's the plan that guides the entire development. The main thing that I'm walking it through here is just the process of loading the plan, preparing the implementation, like maybe making a new Git branch, for example, like any kind of process that you have in your usual software development lifecycle for how you want an engineer to work. We're just encoding that into the command here. We want to make sure that we're verifying any kinds of assumptions. So we're also sort of doing like a second pass on the plan before we go into the implementation. So yeah, then describing how we want to do validation, for example, when we want to pass control back to the user, outlining all of that for the agent. And so going back to our diagram here, we're in this step right now, right? We've cut a fresh session, sent the plan into implementation, and then we'll wait for it to write the code, do all of its own validation, and then we'll also step in and we'll do a code review, right? And it's not like you have to do this. Some people are a big fan of just shipping the code right to production and having the coding agent do its own work. I'm not a fan of that myself. The engineer in me still wants to review all the code. So for any like serious production coding that I'm doing, I still am reviewing all the code myself, and then also doing manual testing. And so we can see that after we do the implementation, like I'll refresh the page here and we'll check out this new feature. Like we'll see the QR code that's generated and we'll make sure that's all working before we would actually be confident to, merge that pull request into our main branch, for example, or whatever that looks like for your software development lifecycle going into production. So that review is important. And, while we wait for the coding agent to run through everything here, you can see that it created its internal task list based on the plan. It's writing the code, doing all the testing. It's actually going to get through this feature pretty quick because I purposely built a simple one. But as it is doing this, I want to quickly talk about the last part of the system here. And then, of course, after this, we'll quickly get into time for a Q&A with Lior too. So the last thing I want to talk about is system evolution. So whenever we do a piv loop, it is very, very far from guaranteed that the implementation will be perfect. Coding agents are not perfect. They are non-deterministic by nature. Even if we work super, super hard to align with it in the planning phases, there are still going to be mistakes. But the powerful part of this system is we don't have to just treat the bug as a one-off fix that we address and then move on to the next piv loop or move on to that next ticket. We can spend some time to also fix the system that allowed the bug. And what I mean by that is we can have a sort of, retroactive session with the coding agent where we say, okay, Claude, you allowed this problem to creep into my code base. I want you to dive into your AI layer. Like take a look at your rules. Take a look at your commands and skills, the process, the workflow that I brought you through. And I want you to identify things that we could improve there so that this kind of issue doesn't happen again. Like, for example, maybe it broke something in the polling here where, I don't know, let's say that like all of a sudden the website looks really ugly when it built this new feature because it didn't like create it didn't create the component in the same style as the rest of our code base. Well, maybe that means that there's something in our global rules that we have to update for like our style conventions. Or maybe we need to build something into our validate workflow where whenever we validate a code base, we make sure that like any new front-end component that we build is in compliance with the styles of our other components that are already in the code base. Just kind of a random example I'm giving you there. But the point is, generally, when your coding agent does something wrong, there's going to be something in the context you give it that you can improve to not necessarily for sure fix the problem, but you're using it as an opportunity to continue to evolve your AI layer, making your rules more specific over time, making your workflows more reliable. And the best part of this is when you use every single Jira ticket as potentially an opportunity to improve your system, you get to improve the whole process for everybody. Because you can check in your rules and commands and skills into source control just like your code base. The entire team can reuse these things, and you can even create pull requests to update commands, just like you create pull requests to update your code base. So you can do code reviews, making sure that everyone's in line with the changes you're making. I know that sounds like a decent amount of work, but it's so high leverage because every single time you improve a command or a skill, it might save engineers dozens and dozens of hours going forward because you've now made the validation process more reliable, or you've made the style conventions respected more often, whatever that might end up looking like. And so really like the 4 things that I generally improve over time in a code base is my commands, my on-demand context. This could also even mean like things in Confluence. You just, optimize your documents in Confluence for AI understanding, your global rules, and then also, of course, like your plan and PRD templates. You might want to find and fix gaps in those over time. And so for every single code base, I'm constantly doing this, right? Like if I have a piv loop where there is some kind of major issue, I step outside of the piv loop to do this system evolution. I will update things that I created up front, and then I'll go into the next piv loop. And if actually there are no issues at all, and the coding agent completely rocked that Jira ticket, then literally you just loop right back, right? You go through the planning process, you load that next Jira ticket, and you go through the process. So it becomes very, very cyclical. There's basically 2 loops here. You have the inner loop when everything's working well and you're just chugging through the work with the help of your coding agent. And then you have the outer loop when you're taking some time to reflect and make your system better. So it's not like you always have to do the outer loop, but I encourage you to do it pretty often, because not only are you improving your commands and other parts of your system here, but you are also customizing your process to your specific code base over time. It's like what I said, all of the commands and skills that I have for you guys here, they're a starting point, but they're more general, right? Like if you want to really optimize something for your process, you're going to start with these, find opportunities to make them more specific to your validation strategy or your planning strategy, whatever that might be. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, that really is the whole process at a high level here. And so I'm going to head back to Claude here and see where we are at. Okay, so the implementation is complete. We did it in a branch because our implementation command told it to. We ran all of our validation here. Here are the files that are changed, just giving us a summary of everything that was done. It says that the implementation matched the plan. So I also have a part of the process here. This is actually something I did recently for my system evolution, where after it does the implementation, it looks at the code and compares it to the plan to make sure that we didn't deviate. And then it also used the MCP server from Atlassian to update the ticket. So there's a lot of the admin work that we did as well, creating the branch, creating the pull request, updating the Jira ticket. We don't have to have the developer spend their time doing that stuff retroactively. So now if I go back and refresh my page here in Jira, we can see that everything is to do except for this one piece of work that we picked up here. And I think it also said there was even a comment. Yep, here we go. So it also posted a comment with full details. And maybe this is more, context than we'd really want as a comment on a Jira ticket. But if you have a problem with this, then that would, also be an opportunity for system evolution, where you just specify in the implement command, once you're done with the implementation, here is a more concise version of context that I'd want you to comment on the Jira ticket. So now we can have this going into a code review, send it off to, your VP to go and review, or, whatever that is. So pretty cool. And then we can also test this in the application here. So I'm going to refresh here. I'll create a new poll. Let's say what's for lunch, and we'll just say spicy mango chicken or spicy mango beef. All right, cool. So I'll create this poll, and I don't actually see the QR code. I might need to restart the application. I think that might be why. So let me go back here and say, all right, I want you to restart the application and then use the agent browser skill so you can visit it and make sure we have the QR code. And then let me know like how I can see the QR code myself. All right, so I think I just have a stale version of the application. Yeah, so if I want to look at more context, I can literally just go to the ticket here. So we have a server helper. I mean, this is like a bit more technical. Like honestly, I would probably rather have a higher level overview of what was actually built. Again, something you could just change in the command. But yeah, so let me go ahead and jump back over, see what Claude said. Code utility. There's no consumer of it yet. Oh, got it. Okay, so it built out the code, but we need to actually make it so that the front end consumes it. I want you to quickly implement the consumer, just really fast, no validation, no Jira ticket. Just go and add this right now so that I can see it live. Okay, so that's my bad. I didn't catch the fact that this was just getting the piping in place. And then it is that follow-up issue that we're originally looking at that does the presentation. So that's on me. So everything is working as intended, but we just have to. Okay, so it created a QR demo page. So we can quickly look at that. So we'll see that in a second once it does its own validation. So I'm also showing a live demonstration of the agent browser, where we can see it open up the website, and it'll even take a screenshot and validate things visually too. And then of course, in parallel, we can do the exact same thing. So I'll go back to the application and then I'll just do QR demo. Pretty cool. So yeah, I know that this is just a placeholder here, but I told it to build something quick to validate the piping that we put in place. And so then when we go on to the next issue, the one that was depending on this, then that's when we build in the full presentation view and actually use the QR code for real. And again, the point of this isn't to show the full application, but just the process that builds these kinds of things. So, all right, that is really the process as a whole. We've covered it all, from planning all the way to system evolution and creating those pull requests, getting that code into production. And I do want to reiterate that this process takes a good amount of time. it's not like you're going to blitz through something as fast as me. It can be if you want, but the important thing is, even if you do take a lot of time iterating on the plans and validating the code, it's still going to save you so many hours of work creating those documents, updating things in Jira, writing the code. The days are gone now of going to Stack Overflow in order to get your questions answered. You don't have to copy and paste and be a Stack Overflow warrior anymore. So yeah, there you go. That is the full process for AI coding. It's foundational and simple enough where you can take this and mold it to whatever your software development process is, standardizing things across your team with the AI layer as well. And yeah, one last thing that I want to mention here before we go into a time of Q&A with Lior is that if this process looks good to you and you want to like really get into this, understand my full methodology, my best practices for creating rules and commands and skills, and see what it looks like to really go through system evolution. If you want more than just the bird's eye view, I have an agentic coding course in my Dynamis community. And Dynamis actually celebrated its 1-year anniversary on Sunday. So it has been 1 year of this community. We have 3 courses in the community. So we have, of course, the agentic coding course that I was just talking about. We have our AI Second Brain course, which you could go through to like instantly save yourself hours and hours a week for managing your life. And then the AI Agent Mastery course. There's also weekly workshops that I do. And there's a special that I'm running right now because of the anniversary. So the special is going away after our anniversary. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat. And yeah, would love to have you in the community with the weekly workshops, the courses. I have actually daily events where I can help you build your second brain, work through your projects. And of course, we have over 1,400 AI early adopters that are all sharing amazing things that they're working on and opportunities every single day. So I would love to see you there in the community, and we'll have a time right now for some Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen right now. And then I will bring Lior back on stage here. And you guys can go ahead and put your questions in the chat. If it's a question for both of us, cool. If it's for either one of us, that works as well. Just make sure you say like, hey, this is a question for Cole. This is a question for Lior. And yeah, I'll just go through them in the order that they come in the chat here.
Great job, Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Lior. Appreciate it.
I just opened, there was an article that came out a couple of months ago about Stack Overflow and the drop. And like their peak was in 2014. They had 200,000 questions posted a month.
Wow.
In December, last December was 3,800 total.
Jeez. That, yeah, I didn't realize the drop was that steep. I knew it was steep, but I thought it was more like a, 1/4 kind of thing. That's crazy.
No, more like 99% kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. It's unfortunate. But also there is a bit of like, people are saying Stack Overflow is going to make a comeback just because of how costly inference is becoming for coding agents right now. And that's part of why context management is so important currently, because a lot of these like subsidized subscriptions with Anthropic and Codex, like the rate limits are getting worse. Large language models are getting more expensive. Like if you look at the cost of GPT 5.5 compared to GPT 4 or even GPT 5, it's pretty crazy. It's like a 10x in cost per 1 million tokens.
Capability is not more expensive, meaning because so 5.4 is now cheaper, right? And so it's a new capability that's more expensive, but capability is not more expensive. Generally speaking, capability-wise, this is the most expensive it'll ever be.
Sure. Yep. Especially because of local AI. Yeah.
That's right. It's always going to go down. I think Stack Overflow have, something that a lot of businesses don't, which is community.
Sure.
And they have, vetted developers that are very helpful, and that they're great. So I think it's probably something they can play with that. In terms of knowledge, I don't think there's value there. But in terms of a bias and certification and trusting opinions and trusting strategy and those kind of things, I think they have a major advantage if they shift and pivot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Cool. I'm getting compliments on my retro ICQ notification. So people are, and by the way, that's my cloud code, like audio.
Nice.
So people are revealing their ages. I still remember my ICQ user ID.
Nice.
But yeah, thank you for that.
Cool. Yeah, someone asked, will this live feed be saved as a YouTube video later to rewatch? And the answer is yes. So that's not even in my control. YouTube automatically turns a live stream into a recording that you can view on the live tab for my channel. I actually just saw my face freeze again. That's really weird. So I guess it isn't just when I'm switching screens. But anyway, yeah. So if you just go to my YouTube channel and then click on the live tab, then I think there's a little bit of processing time. So it's probably not immediate, but within the next day, it'll be up. All right. Is there going to create dependencies between Jira tasks? Yeah, so Chris, I believe you asked this before. I actually talked about that, but yep, you can make it as a part of your command to create dependencies and map out blockers and things like that. This is so lightweight compared to GitHub Spec Kit. That is the goal. Yep. And again, GitHub Spec Kit is a really good framework. But for myself personally, it's not one I want to use. Maybe it's one I want to learn from, though. So for a lot of these solutions out there like BMAD and GitHub Spec Kit and GSD, I feel like they're too over-engineered and hard to customize for me. But when I create my own system, I will literally just point Claude Code to look at that repository because it's open source. All these tools are open source, and just say like, hey, I like how they do planning, or like help me understand how the Constitution is built in GitHub Spec Kit. Maybe I want to like bring that into my own commands. So it's also another really powerful way to do system evolution, is to just take ideas from these things that are out there that are too much for you to customize yourself, but still have good ideas. All right. Kind of expected Stack Overflow community to release a coding agent. Yeah, it is surprising they haven't. That's true. Late to the live, but how do you determine the architecture of the memory and database when implementing this for businesses using traditional RAG? Light RAG or an Obsidian database? I think this might be a question for you, Lior. You might have to specify, Brad, if this is referring to my coding agents talking about like the CTOX OS. Oh, do you have a thought on that, Lior?
Yeah, that's what it depends on what they're referring to. In the operating system context, we try to create that brain structure on an agent, department, and company level. So when an agent transacts, however it transacts, it actually builds the context from all three brains. That way you don't have any marketing noise on finance noise and stuff like that. So we don't use, as far as the architecture itself, it depends on the complexity. I worked with a small business and MD files are great, quick, efficient, easy. And then with some of the larger businesses I worked with, it's very sophisticated database structures. So
yeah,
but that's for organization level. It's not for like personal productivity, which Obsidian or any of the kind of lossless memory, Mongo, any of those architectures can work pretty well.
Yeah, that's a good answer. It's got to be fit for purpose in the end.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, like one thing that people are really gung-ho about right now is Karpathy LLM knowledge bases.
Yeah, LLM Wiki.
Yeah, LLM Wiki. That's right. And like those are powerful. Kind of what Lior is saying. I mean, especially because like Karpathy literally talks about his being based in Obsidian. It's like that's more for personal productivity. And so when you really want to like scale something for an entire organization to use, and if you really have like millions and millions of tokens of information, like that's not going to scale. So it's a really good starting point. It's a cool architecture. It's great for a lot of personal things, like Karpathy using it to help them prepare for content, or like Lex Friedman, he commented on that X post. He's like, I use this exact kind of thing to help me prepare for podcasts. Like for individual pieces of work where you don't have an insane amount of context, that's a great way to organize thoughts on a personal level. Yeah. All right. Spec Kit is great, but so overkill for a solopreneur. I do agree. When doing the review and update memory loop, how often do you pollute your memory rather than upgrade it? Also, when do you stop adding and start distilling to avoid bloat? All right. So I think you're talking about the system evolution here. And again, feel free to specify if this is a different kind of question for the review and update memory. But for the system evolution, it's less about updating a memory file and more about tweaking your commands and rules. So at that point, you're not necessarily adding more context. I mean, sometimes you do have to specify more, but it also could even just be rewording things. So it isn't necessarily like you're always appending and appending. Now, for something more like a second brain, or if you have an agent with like a soul.md, for example, that might be more appending, or if you're trying to build memories over time. The main thing I would say there is like you actually want that to grow a lot over time, and then you can use something like an LLM wiki, or if you have to scale beyond that, like having semantic search with like a RAG database for all of your memories. So I hope that helps. And yeah, feel free to clarify too. I don't know, Lior, if you wanted to talk more about like the memory system for the CTOOX as well.
Yeah, I try to keep it very manicured. Also with humans, like people value memory. I think they overvalue memory. Meaning forgetting is a feature, is not just a bug. You don't, when I, just to make it human, right, and not just like super technical. It's not a good idea if my wife is mad at me and she brings up something for 20 years ago, right? It's not
Yeah.
it's not very productive for the conversation. So there's a real value in limiting the memory pool that you're operating for a task. And we even see it. We see it with Anthropic, right? They're kind of saying, hey, your Claude MD files need to be smaller. Like they actually show this research of how it's more productive sometimes with less context. So just adding context to everything doesn't actually make it better. And people are obsessive about endless memory.
Right.
So in the OS context, each agent, because they're super specialized and they infer from the task, what do they need to know in order to do the task? Then they build their context on the fly for it. And they don't, if they're handling some client now, then they're going to look at that client history for context. If they're handling some content activity now, they're going to look at the history of content types. They're not going to, if doing a podcast, they're not going to look at social media stuff and so on. So when we design the agent, we really make sure that the context and the memory are limited.
Yeah, very well said. Love that. Cool. Want your opinion on this. I dream of a spec-centered IDE where the code is the specs and the actual code is largely deterministically built from those. Have you thought of this? That's a cool idea. Like, I kind of get what you're saying. I mean, there are some spec-driven IDEs, like Hero, for example, is a really cool coding agent I've used a lot before, where the whole interface is very like spec-driven. And so you're focusing less on the code. I mean, it still looks a lot like a traditional IDE, like VS Code, where you're looking at the code a lot. So I know it's not exactly what you're describing, but I think certainly like in the future, the IDE is going to die, where you're going to just be working only in the terminal, or you're going to be only talking to your agents in Slack, for example. You're going to be asking it to do pieces of work just like you would another coworker. Or it's going to be kind of like you're describing, where, I mean, you'll still have an IDE, but it just doesn't look anything like it does now because there's not really any code. You're just focusing on the spec in that desktop application. So yes, I have thought of that a lot before. All right. How would you apply this stack to a different area? For example, instead of using it for building code for an accounting area. So if you're asking about my agentic engineering process, I wouldn't necessarily say that it applies a lot to things outside of coding. That would maybe more apply to like my system for building a second brain. It's another thing that I focus on a lot on my channel, because I have a system kind of like Lior, where I have like the soul.md, and then I have my memory system. I have skills that I give the agent, so it has capabilities to work with my platforms like email and my task management. So I would maybe check out that content on my channel if you're interested. A lot of what I'm covering here is really specific to agentic engineering, because like, I mean, maybe you could try to like really fit this, but you don't really have like Jira for accounting, or at least not nearly in the same way. You're not managing context in the same way or doing validation in the same way. All right. Cool. Let's see. Was Agent Browser automatically triggered in Piv, or do you manually command it? So for my demonstration, I did manually command it. Like I said, use the Agent Browser to validate the QR code once you have the demo created. But that can be something that is automatically triggered in the Piv loop. Because if that's a capability that you have given to your coding agent, like it has, the Claude Code has that skill, then you can build the usage of that skill in the command or in the plan. So like going back to my structured plan, I had that validate section where I said like, do your unit testing, write the unit tests, do your linting and type checking. You could add something on there that's like, once you go through those initial levels of validation, all of the lower hanging fruit, then you would start the application, use the agent browser to perform browser automation testing. take screenshots as you create the polls and answer them, and have the QR code and things like that. You can build that into the process, or you could even add it to something in your rules where it's like whenever you do validation, use the agent browser. So that way you never even have to specify when you're creating the plan, and it's going to automatically know to just add that into whatever validation process you have in your structured plans. All right, that's actually, by the way, one of my favorite things to add to global rules is my validation process, because it applies to pretty much no matter what work I'm currently doing in my code base. And like Lior said, you want to keep your global rules pretty concise, because otherwise it actually harms more than it helps. So that is one of the things, like out of everything, I cut out a lot of what I used to have before, but like validation strategy, I still always build into my claude.md files. Yeah, you're welcome. I heard you guys saying we should go to pre-AI books. What do you think of that? I think you might have to clarify that question. Oh, okay. It looks like you removed it anyway. It's all good. All right. On that note, I'm using Archon for writing project documentation for short projects for agent specialists, doing structured predefined workflows and loops. That is super cool. So I haven't talked about Archon in this stream. Lior, you probably don't even know what that is, but it's an open source project that I'm working on for really like making it super easy to build harnesses around coding agents. But then what this person is saying here is that you can use it for a lot more than just AI coding, because you can take any agentic process, wrap it up as an Archon workflow, where it's just a single file to walk an agent through any process that you have, like even combining different skills and capabilities and having deterministic actions like built in to individual steps. So you're enforcing certain actions to happen, not always leaving it up to the agent. So creating a project documentation workflow for Archon is super cool. Love to.
Cool idea.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. I also dream of a future where agents run the OS itself and address bugs, issues, and recommendations directly. Maybe a suggestion to Microsoft can become a personalized local feature on the spot. That's cool. Yeah, Lior, for your OS, do you have any kind of like self-improvement or system where like agents can identify issues?
Yeah, we have a few. We have generally from an architecture standpoint, you have the standalone agents, but you also have dispatcher agents, because when you have hundreds of agents, you need to coordinate the crons. Otherwise, you have like thousands of crons.
Yep.
And you have refiner agents. So every time an agent runs, there's a score that we create based on some standard, some kind of a definition of done. And every 48 hours, it looks at it and see if we need to improve it. It change the model, change the data, input, output, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And we have in the agent lab, there's two kind of fun features, because this is deployed in one org with like 180 people. So there's one feature that they can just prompt their own new agents, which are created within the constraints of the system. So it's not, can't leak. But there's also this deja vu type, where it just observes, they're observing agents, and look at the work and say, hey, this can possibly be agent assisted or agent replaced.
Nice.
So then it spontaneously suggested to the different team leads, like it depends on permission, who can add agents, and add it to the workflow. So,
wow, that's very cool. Oh. Love to see that. Nice. All right. For fractional CTOs who are staffing project work, I'm curious where we should draw a line as far as desired experience with this stuff. Is there a market full of devs now who understand this type of flow?
I'm hiring a bunch right now. I also let go of a bunch that are highly resistant to the flow. Like I hired Cole. Cole does these incredible workshops for engineering teams. And after a Cole workshop, if I'm still getting resistant, you don't get to be, in my engineering team, right? Especially if we're investing as a company, we're investing in you and you're upscaling and giving you all the tools and the budgets and the tokens and so on and so forth. So at the same time, we're hiring new devs all the time. And the standards, the standards are made up in real time. Cole is a big standard maker, right? He's kind of leading the way, showing all these best practices, and the community is adopting them and then integrating into their companies and flows. So I'm looking right now, if somebody comes in with a lot of specific workflows that are really great, that's amazing. But more importantly, I want to just see how they work. So my general guidance to my teams is, if you're writing code manually right now, I don't need you. You're as good as an orangutan for me at this point. And I'm looking to hire pilots in cockpits. That's all I
Yep.
need. Pilots and cockpits. So in the interview, we're gonna see how you fly. Fire up your station, and we're gonna do something just like Cole did in his workshop. We're gonna build something simple, some kind of a form, some kind of a submission, just to see how you prompt and how you operate, and what do you understand that you need to do in order to get a good result. Like, how much of it do you understand? Now, if you understand a lot and you're like fire, you have great processes, amazing, and I'm excited for you to join. But if you intuitively just do everything there, but you have some of your processes not polished because you're not aware of the industry insights, that's fine for me too. But if you're opening and you're starting to get like Google Doc and plan some architecture manually, I'm like, this is great. The gap is too far for you to catch up with where I need you to be. Right? Leading engineering teams, that I'm just going to go with someone else at this point. So it's actually fairly common. We see somebody that, might be 22, 24, not a ton of experience, but they're so AI first. I will take them over a 40-year-old with 20 years of experience any day of the week, because the AI can catch up on the 40-year experience. Right? But the AI can't catch up on the attitude. Like the 40-year-old can't catch up with the attitude of the 24-year-old. So so yeah, I don't think it's full of devs that understand all this, but it's certainly full of devs that have the attitude and are very actively trying and doing great work.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. And one thing to kind of tag on to that, by the way, if you find someone that's resistant to AI, I mean, it happens all the time, especially more senior engineers, like Lior was saying. One thing that I found that really helps, this is what I tried to really start with in my workshops. It's kind of what I did here with my 1 hour now, is I'll just start by using it to help plan. Right? Like if I went out for coffee with someone who's super resistant to using AI coding assistance, I'd say open your laptop, open up Claude Code, and just like start sharing an idea that you want to build. You're not even committing to building anything. It's okay if you think that it's really stupid. Just see what happens, like what it can kind of come up with ideas, and watch it, like search the web and explore your code base if you're trying to build something on top. And then they kind of get sucked into it from there. Like, oh wait, actually, it really understands my code base here, or like it really knows a good tech stack for this thing I want to build. And then you say, okay, well now just like ask it to build. So you kind of like I sort of sneak in the process I just shared with you guys, where you start really unstructured, and then all of a sudden you get to the point in the conversation where you're like, man, it really like knows what I'm trying to do here. And then that's when you go to create more structure. Like, let's build that plan document and then send it off to implementation. So I find that helps. If you ever have a coworker or friend or someone who's really opposed, just tell them to start by using it to ideate or plan, and then you just kind of get sucked into it from there because you realize the capability.
I would even piggyback on that. Don't just ideate a plan. Just open and just share what you're frustrated with.
Right.
Just share what it's just like it's a therapy session. Say, I really don't want to do this, or I have this project to work on today. Just like start it, because then you're going to have the snowball effect, and it's going to be a positive feedback loop, because it's like playing slots. It's like that dopamine is going to hit every time it responds. And you're like, yeah, do this. Yeah, that's a good idea. So it's really just a start friction you need to get rid of. And then they can get the ball rolling.
That's right. Yeah. I used to be resistant to AI, believe it or not, because I come from an engineering background. One of the very first things that I ever had, back at the time, is literally just ChatGPT write a script for me. Was an AWS EC2 startup script. For anyone who's worked with AWS before, like those are kind of tricky because it's hard to like debug, because you have to like spin up a new instance every time you need to test a tweak to the bash script. I hated making that. And it was like a really complex one that I needed to set up to like manage things with security and hooking up to an EBS volume and all that. So anyway, like I had ChatGPT like write the script for me, and it actually got it right the first time. Like I just gave a big brain dump, kind of like what I did here. Like, here's what I needed to do. And it just nailed it, pasted it into the console, spun up the instance, and it worked. And yeah, this was one of like those first things that really got me thinking, like, you know what, this really is the future. Because that was back in like probably 2023. So it was before like coding agents were even much of a thing. Like I was just like copying the code from ChatGPT, like a glorified Stack Overflow at that point. But yeah, it's amazing what it can do even back then.
Yeah. Also on that, the reason why I didn't mention in my talk, one of the biggest values of specialized agents, it's because of that. Like AWS is a good example. It's a PIDA, and In normal code, right, if we debug or trace, we run, and then it's like, oh, line 318. Here's the problem, right? Here's where the procedure failed, the function failed, and so on. If the agents are too big, you don't have that. You don't have that. Like, where did the open claw fail with this task? How do you do that? How do you, which skill, which prompt, which memory, like, where did it fail? So the more the agent is specialized, you can actually find and trace where is the problem.
Right.
And it's a huge value. Same thing for the architectures that you're talking about. Just that separation and forcing the process the errors always happen. Problems always happen. You need to recognize it. So how do you design a process that you can trace back and find the problem? And you do that by separating phases, forcing phases, specializing tasks. Why do we do a PR with a limited set of actions as opposed to 500 things? That's actually what separates, good architecture and bad of well-manicured PRs. A big value of the philosophical approach of specialized agents opposed to big master agents.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Cool. Well, we got one more question in the chat here. I think we'll close things off after. Question for Lior. You mentioned the agent score of success. Is the output measured by dedicated agents or programmatically? So I guess is it non-deterministic or deterministic?
It is deterministic. And the agents score themselves, but then you have another agent that reviews the score and infers like what to do with it. But it is determinate. We can do that with specialized agents. We can't do that with something too big because then the number doesn't mean much. It's too blended, right? Sure. But we actually create a scorecard for a task so we can evaluate, just like you do. What's the definition of done? We can evaluate the task. So when the agent is created, there's an evaluation that's created with it for every run of the agent.
Nice. All right. I love that. Nice and simple. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, I think we've got to the end of the list of questions here. So just for the last bit of time, I want to give Lior a chance to just share like how you can find out more. Like someone actually asked where to learn more about Lior's work that he just referenced. So if you wanted to share a little bit about where people can find you and what you're up to right now, that'd be great.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Instagram. Best way. My passion is really helping people think through this, right? Because the tooling changes all the time. And you want to be able to know the principles so you can apply and know what tools to create. The operating system, there's two things. One, I wrote a book this year that's going to come out later this year. I'm very excited for it. And that book is going to cover all these principles and the operating system approach and how organizations can pivot into this new modality. In terms of if you're interested in fractional CTO work, CTOX is the largest community of fractional CTOs in the world. Been around for 2 years. We've had over 350 people run through the program. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot like right now on Slack, I think we're like 230 people or so. So it's a lot of fun when Cloudflare goes down and everybody's like, what do we do? So it's a good place to trade ideas and grow practice. Some people come with no experience with anything in terms of business and entrepreneurship. And some people come and they have some clients, but they need to grow or they're looking for a community. All those things are really great. We're business oriented. I would say we're not a certification program. So if you're like an individual contributor engineer, we don't have that engineer to CTO track. If you have leadership experience of different kinds, it could be a great opportunity for you. And we really love what we do. I really love it. It's a lot of fun. When I started my path doing this, I had no community. So it took me 5 years before I built this. And now it's really great and we're really passionate about it. So if that's interesting, ctox.com. In a few months, I hope we're going to create a much bigger community on cto.com, which is coming up. So hopefully any and all engineers or people that are interested in technology can join and learn how to expand in this new age of technology. Now, everybody is, whether you like it or not, in 2026, you are a tech company.
Right.
Meaning, if you're running a falafel kiosk or if you're running an 8,000 person organization, you cannot run your business without tech. You can't do it. And so having good philosophy, having good guidance, having good attitude, having optimistic attitude towards a wave that you can't stop is very important. That's going to determine everybody's success and fun. And that's a lot of what I talk about, what we talk about. We have a CTOX podcast that's great, almost 50 episodes about anything related to the field. And I highly recommend if you're interested in that work, or if you want to do that work regardless of our program, you should listen to it because it'll make your work better.
Nice.
And that's it. Yeah, feel free to connect.
Very cool. All right. And by the way, I did actually a workshop for CTOX back in
Yes,
December,
sir.
and it was a really, really awesome group to come be a part of for a little bit. So, all right. Yeah. And then I'll end things off by just sharing a little bit for myself here. I'm going to put two things in the chat really quick. I got a reminder for the anniversary special for Dynamis. If you guys want to dive deeper into building agents and using AI coding assistants in ways that actually scale, I've got the link there. And then also my email address if you're interested in these trainings where I come into an organization and do a full 4-hour session to help you create a standard for your team to get reliable results with these tools, then feel free to reach out. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you, Lior, for this. This was an absolute pleasure. Loved everything you had to share. And like I said, once you were done, like I learned a lot from you as well. So this was awesome. And thank you everyone for being here and all of your fantastic questions for the both of us too. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And Lior, do you have anything to close us out?
That's it. I definitely recommend Cole's workshops. It helped my teams a lot. So if they have an opportunity to hire him, definitely do that. It'll just be an instant upgrade for everybody. And thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you as well. All right, have a good one, guys.